Good afternoon and welcome everyone to our webinar this afternoon looking into what's new in the second edition of our General Mathematics subject for Queensland Units 1 and 2, along with some support for the syllabus implementation. My name is Kim Keane and I'm the State Manager here in Queensland. Before we get started today, in the spirit of reconciliation, Cambridge University Press acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present, and we extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. Unfortunately, we're not able to hear from Joel this afternoon. He was going to be the first presenter that we have. So rather than it being separated into three parts for the webinar today, we'll have two speakers. We will have a recording of Joel, though. Unfortunately, he had some internet issues. So we'll add that into the recording of the webinar that you'll receive a link for after the webinar. We'll add that onto the landing page. So you'll hear more about that in the days coming.
Hi everyone, and thanks for coming along. I'm super excited about the new textbook coming out. I've taken a look at it. It looks great. I got to do a little bit of work on it, and that's what I'm here today to talk about. I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. But before I get to my little chapter from the textbook, I wanted to talk about just more generally changes to assessment in the new syllabus. Because obviously the new syllabus has been around for a little while, and now that we're going into the revision, I think they've made it even better, and I'm really excited for some of the opportunities that we have as maths teachers. So, in the current syllabus, we have an IA1, which is any topic from Unit 3, an IA2, which is a 2-hour exam, which has to cover all of Unit 3, or a representative sample, and an IA3, which again has to cover all of Unit 4. Now, the new syllabus, the 2025 syllabus, a little bit different. So the IA1 can do any topic at all from Unit 3 or Unit 4. So we're really spoilt for choice there, get to do lots of cool new fun stuff, I think. The IA2 is not a 2-hour exam, it's a 90-minute exam, and you only have to cover 3 out of the 5 topics from Unit 3. And the IA3 is the same, only 3 out of the 5 topics from Unit 4. So we're really going to get a big opportunity for a whole choose your own adventure type scenario. So in the old syllabus, the one we're currently in, planning out your assessment has been pretty straightforward. So you would have these topics. These are our Unit 3 topics, and then all of Unit 4. So you could think of it like this, because you had 3 assessment items, IA1, IA2, IA3, and you had to work with what you have here. So generally, most schools did something like put your IA1 after bivariate data analysis, put your IA2 at the end of Unit 3, because you've got to cover all those topics, and then put your IA3 at the end of Unit 4. Now, there might be a small amount of variation here. So I can imagine that some schools are doing their IA1 after time series analysis and doing an IA1 on time series analysis. Maybe there's a few schools doing topics here, but I'm not sure. I haven't spoken to many people that are doing those topics. If that's you, make sure you talk about it in the chat. If you've got a totally different way that you're working in the current syllabus, in the chat, let us know about it. I'll be really interested to hear about it. That's the syllabus that we're currently in. Now, in the new syllabus, you've got to think about it totally different, because you've got all of these topics from Unit 3 and Unit 4. So the topics haven't really changed, but you really do have more of an opportunity to consider sequencing them in totally new and interesting ways. So, for example, let's bring our IA1, IA2, and IA3 again. We can put our IA1 after bivariate data like we did before. And then we can do these 3 topics and do IA2. Now, when we're doing that IA2, we can just do it on these 3 topics. We can just ignore these topics and say, well, we did them in the PSMT, we're not going to do them here. And then you could do what you've traditionally done and do all of Unit 4 and then do your exam. To me, that doesn't seem like something we're going to do, though, because you only have to cover 3 of these topics. So I can imagine a lot of us might move towards a model that looks a bit like this, doing just the annuity stuff first, and then the first bit of networks, and then an exam, and then covering all of the Hungarian algorithms and stuff like that after our IA3. But this is probably as close as you can get to the current syllabus, but we've got so much freedom. You could do it in a whole bunch of different ways. So for example, why don't we do something like this? Do 3 topics and then do our exam first, not our PSMT. And then why don't we do a little bit of Unit 4, loans, investment, annuities, and a PSMT. I don't know how you'd feel about a PSMT on loans, investments, and annuities, but it'd be interesting. That'd be something new and interesting for us to look at. And then you can do 3 topics, the rest of the 3 topics from Unit 4, and then do your IA3, and then you can finish with Earth geometry and time series analysis. So breaking up Unit 3 here and here, and then 2 assessments on Unit 4. Very different to our current setup. What else could we do? We could do something like this. So 3 and then an exam, 3 and then an exam, and then do networks and decisions and a PSMT on networks and decisions. PSMT on Hungarian algorithm, PSMT on minimum spanning trees, all sorts of really fun, I think, PSMTs that you could do with network and decision math. So I'm super excited about the freedom. You could even do something like starting with Unit 4. Start with graphs and networks, and then a little bit of network stuff, and then do your PSMT, and then do 3 Unit 3s, 3 Unit 4s, and then finish off with a couple of Unit 3s at the end before your exam. So I am very excited about where this leads. I think we've got all sorts of opportunities for creativity to work within our own specific spaces. A school, you know, you've got very specific things towards your school. So I'm excited about this. All right, so in the chat, if you're looking at all of this and you're thinking, yes, I've already thought about that, or, oh, that's interesting, I'm going to do it a different way, let us know. If you've got questions about it, throw something in the chat there. What else have we got when it comes to the new syllabus? Well, I think everything I've just spoken about is Year 12, but we're here talking about the current Year 11, or the current Year 10s going into Year 11 next year, getting our new Unit 1 and 2 textbooks. So given that we always tend to try to replicate, or many of us do, try to replicate Year 12 in Year 11, and given I'm talking about all these wild and wonderful ways of sequencing, what could we do differently in Year 11? These are our topics for Year 11. I'd be very interested to hear what people are thinking about in terms of their assessment, because you can really choose what you want to do here. Where would you put a PSMT? Would you do 1 PSMT, 2 PSMTs, 2 exams? Would an exam cover all 5 topics? Would it only cover 3 topics? Really exciting time, but also lots and lots to think about between now and when your Year 11s are coming through next year. So if you've got ideas about that, if you've got questions about that, throw them in the chat. Really, I think, exciting things to talk about. All right, the all-new ISMG for the PSMT. So that's some real Queensland jargon there, but hopefully we all know what we're talking about. We've been dealing with ISMGs for a while now, but the ISMG has changed. And if any of you saw me at, I think it was at a HOD forum a little while ago, I was dead set against this new ISMG, but given all of the work that I've done in creating the new chapter for the textbook, I'm a convert. I really think the new ISMG is much better than our old ISMG, so I'm happy to be wrong there. Spot on. Okay, new ISMG, so formulate looks different. We've gotten rid of the word documentation, and we now have justified statements, which I think is much nicer way of talking. When it comes to formulate, that's what we've got there. Now, when it comes to solve feels a little easier. We've gotten rid of that discerning use, and now we have accurate use of mathematical knowledge for important aspects of the task, efficient use of technology, and a complete solution. So it feels a little easier to make those judgments. I know discerning was something that always caused some problems. I really like what we've got here with evaluate. We've gone from 3 dot points to 5 dot points. Most teachers were sort of using a de facto 5 dot points anyway, but now we've broken up that big dot point that we originally had with verified results, justified statements about the reasonableness by considering assumptions, and justified statements about the reasonableness by considering observations. So spot on, I like it. And then also we've got correct use of appropriate mathematical language. We've dropped procedural vocabulary and whatever the other one was. We've dropped that stuff, and now we just have correct use of appropriate language. And the others are pretty much the same, except justification of decisions made has moved. And I think it's moved to the right spot. I think this is a good change. Okay, another change to the PSMT. There's no time limit to the PSMT anymore. So you've still got a limit on the amount of class time that you can use in year 12. You can do whatever you like in year 11, and I want to talk about that in a moment. But in year 12, you've still got a time limit of 3 hours of class time, but you can use as many weeks as you want to. So that means that you could hand it out at the start of year 12 and collect it at the end of year 12. Now, I'm not saying that's a good idea. I think that's probably a terrible idea, but it really does open up some new ideas about how you approach this PSMT and what you think the right amount is. I think it's a good opportunity to talk to other people in other faculties and ask them how long they're handing out their assignments for, because many of their assignments don't have a time limit like we have had in the past. So good opportunity to talk to your colleagues. Okay, I said that there used to be a 4-week time limit for the PSMT. In year 11, no such time limit exists, and no hourly time limit exists in your classroom. So you can spend as long or as little as you like talking to your students about the PSMT. And so this is why I am super excited about this. So this is the appendix that I've written for the new year 11 textbook. And it's appendix designed for explicitly teaching the problem solving and modeling task. I think that as teachers, it's our job to show students exactly what we're looking for them in year 12, and year 11 is a great opportunity to do that. And this, I hope, will be a wonderful resource for you to use in that conversation. So to create this, I've used a lot of resources. I went and visited the QCAA and spoke to them for hours. I read every single subject report from general, methods, and specialist. That's 12 subject reports. Grabbed all of the information that they were giving us, grabbed all of the samples, spoke to a whole bunch of teachers around Queensland. And if that's you, thank you so much for your help with all of this. And I think we've got something here that you can use that's very, very useful. So it'll guide them through the PSMT. It'll talk to them about how it's marked. You can see it's referencing the ISMG throughout the entire appendix, which I think is really important because students need to know that they're aiming for that, shooting for that the whole time. You can see these little QR codes here. Now, if you've seen me before, you know I'm a big fan of videos. So I've made sure that we've got QR codes throughout the appendix that you can scan and you can jump straight into a video, and I'll talk you through whatever the page is, whatever the thing is. Just add a little bit of context, and some people would prefer to hear someone speak than read it off a page. So you've got a whole bunch of videos throughout that appendix. You've also got student samples from across all of the subject reports. So it was tempting here to only use samples from general maths, but in the end, it seemed like actually it was best to take the best from the best subject reports. So I've grabbed some from general, I've grabbed some from methods, I've grabbed some from specialist, so that they can see what I think is the best examples of each thing, the best examples of observations, the best examples of assumptions, the best examples of how to evaluate the reasonableness of your solution, that kind of thing. So super excited about putting all of that in there. I think it is a valuable resource from the QCAA that we don't always get time to engage with, so it's all there for you. Got a whole couple of pages where we sort of talk about a nice model of setting up your solve. Some sentences, some maths, some sentences, and talking about what each of those sentences has inside of them. Inside of those sentences, you're verifying your results, your justified statements of assumptions, justified statements of observations. decisions made, all of that great stuff. So some nice little examples here. The maths is not complicated here, but the point is not the maths. The point is the layout of it. And you can see we're referencing the ISMG throughout, continuing to say, hey, this is what we're driving towards. We're trying to hit these little dots here, trying to get 20 out of 20. Now, there's a bunch of other cool stuff inside of this appendix as well, or at least stuff that I think is cool, stuff that I think is important. The difference between observations and assumptions. I know students can get confused there about what an observation is, what an assumption is. I spent some time there really breaking it down, comparing, contrasting. We've also got lots and lots of examples of how to show efficient use of technology. Often students, I found, use technology, but then they don't show that they've used technology, so they're not getting that top mark that they could be getting. 4 different ways to verify results. I'm pretty proud of this one actually, because sort of looking at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of PSMTs found that depending on what the topic is, you're going to have better ways of verifying your results. Verifying your result is kind of a new dot point, so super excited for that one. Also, guiding questions for strengths and limitations. I know students have often struggled with what is a strength, what is a limitation. Often they'll talk about maybe their own limitations or the limitations of their technology or something like that. But we've used some guiding questions there to give students some key ideas about how to find those strengths and limitations. And then finally, a bit there where we talk about the importance of assumptions. So students often don't realize exactly how important those assumptions are. They tend to be right at the beginning of your PSMT, but they are very important for your solve section, very important for evaluating the reasonableness of your solution, very important in your strengths and limitations. So spending a lot of time on those assumptions and talking about and illustrating why they're so important. All right, that is the appendix that we're going to have in this new one. It's in the Year 11 textbook, which I'm excited about because, like I said, I think Year 11 is the place where you can really hit these students and help them out and guide them so that in Year 12 you can release them a little bit, give them a little less guidance, still provide them some feedback, but Year 11 is really the time to explicitly teach them how to get this done.
Our webinar now, of course, delivered in the 2 parts. So our first presenter today will be Kay Lipson. Kay has a PhD in statistics education and a diploma of education. Her experience includes over 30 years teaching mathematics and statistics at both secondary and tertiary level, as well as extensive periods as a VCE examiner. Kay is an experienced author of textbooks for the years 11 and 12 mathematics courses, specialising in the areas of probability and statistics. Kay will be introducing the new edition of General Mathematics, giving an overview of the book structure, as well as discussing some of the changes in response to the syllabus. So our second speaker will be Melanie Chin. Melanie has taught mathematics in both the QC and university sectors over the past 24 years, utilising her bachelor's degree in secondary mathematics education and master's by research in abstract algebra. She currently teaches at Brisbane Grammar School. In her leadership role, she has had significant involvement with QCAA through the endorsement, confirmation and external exam marking processes. She's also an active member of the Queensland Association of Mathematics Teachers Executive Committee. And Melanie will be taking a deeper look into the features of the book and online resources where she will discuss some of the ways that they can be used in the classroom. Following Melanie's presentation, I'll run a few slides, just a quick summary to give you some timelines of when things are being published, along with price points, so that we can then move into the Q&A session following that with presenters. And then we will introduce our publishers on the books, Scott Halligan, that you all know well, and Ben Staker, who's also looking after the general maths books. As always, this webinar is being recorded and will be distributed as a link by email to all of those registered following this event. So these recording links will also be available on the landing page for the Senior Maths series so you can go to that at any time. And as I mentioned earlier, Joel's part of the presentation will also be added into that recording, so you'll be able to go back and look at that. You can ask any questions in the Q&A box, as always, and you'll see that below on your screen. This will be monitored constantly throughout the webinar, so please go ahead and ask any questions. Without further ado, though, let's get started. Please welcome Kay. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to also welcome you to this afternoon's webinar. We authors have been beavering away in the background for 18 months now, studying curriculum documents, talking to teachers, getting feedback from consultants, and working and reworking past exam papers. We're really excited about this second edition of the GM12 textbook and the enhanced online teaching suite. We're confident that we'll be meeting the needs of you and your students going forward, but we do appreciate up till now and continue to request your feedback and suggestions. A good text is the result of an ongoing dialogue between the authors and the publishers and the textbook users, and we thank you so far for what you've done and encourage you to continue to participate in these conversations like today, but wherever and whenever you can going forward. Today, I'm going to give you an overview of the second edition of the print book for General Maths 1 and 2, and a brief overview of what to expect in General Maths 3 and 4. My co-author and teammate Melanie is going to take you through how she uses the textbook and the online teaching suite materials together to support her pedagogical approach in the classroom. So next slide, please. So let me begin by assuring you, just threw my laptop on the floor, but don't worry, it'll come good. Let me begin by assuring you that the chapters in this book map directly to the 2025 curriculum. They're in the same order as the topics in the syllabus and use the same terminology and the same notation as the QCAA syllabus. So shown here is a mapping for Unit 1. In the left-hand column, we've got the list of topics directly from the syllabus together with their teaching hours. In the centre column are the chapter titles from the new edition of the book. And in the right-hand column is the chapter titles from the first edition, which helps to illustrate how we've responded to the new syllabus. For example, we can see here that there were 2 consumer arithmetic chapters previously, and they've been condensed into 1 because this is a single topic in the QCA syllabus. Shape and measurement has been separated into 2 topics, shape and measurement and similarity and scale, and they each have their own chapter because they are a topic. The topic algebra and matrices, which was in Unit 2, has been separated into 2 topics, algebra, which has moved to Unit 1, and matrices, which remains in Unit 2. Next slide, please. Unit 2, once again, we can see here the same columns. Another change in Unit 2 is that univariate analysis has been split into 2 topics, with the emphasis in the second topic about comparing data sets. So there was a section originally on comparing data sets in the chapter. Now it's been split out and it's a standalone chapter. Now, of course, when topics have been split out, we've included many more examples and exercises in order to meet the syllabus requirements. So there's been quite a lot of additional material added in these instances. Next slide, please. Within the chapters, the subtopics are also directly mapped to the chapter sections. So on the left-hand side, we have a cut and paste from the QCA curriculum document, and on the right-hand side is an excerpt from the table of contents of edition 2. Now you can see, or maybe you can't, but if you could see, you would see that there is a direct one-on-one mapping between the bullet points and the sections. And each bullet point maps directly onto one or sometimes more than one subsection if there is a lot of material in the bullet point, but they are in the exact same order as they are mapped in the curriculum. Next slide, please. The opening page of each chapter is also linked explicitly to the curriculum document in the sense that it is labelled with its unit number and name, its topic number and name, and a set of chapter questions which can serve as an advance organiser, clearly signalling to your students what they will be able to do by the end of the chapter. Next slide, please. At the end of the chapter, there's a chapter review, and this includes the key ideas in chapter summary, the skills checklist, and Melanie will talk more about this a little later on and how she uses it with her students. A set of multiple choice questions which are significantly increased and updated and all have 4 alternatives only. and a set of short response questions, which are modelled on the form of questions students might see in a General Maths 3-4 exam and labelled according to the degree of difficulty, which to the most part, the degree of difficulty questions are allocated in the 60-20-20 ratio, which is what students will see at their end of their assessment in Year 12. Next slide, please. I'll just have some more gin and tonic and then no, it's water. At the end of each unit, there's a revision chapter. Now, the second edition is considerably longer than the first edition. So the old book was 525 pages in length, and this one is 628 pages. So we're up by 20%. And this is almost entirely due to the addition of exercises throughout the chapters, additional exercises in the review section of the chapters, but also to expanded revision chapters. Next slide, please. So the revision chapters now include multiple choice questions, which I'm sure you're very pleased about. They were online in the past. They're now in the text. There's 10 for each chapter, and each revision chapter covers 5 topics. So there's 50 multiple choice questions in that revision chapter. And there is at least 10 short response questions for each chapter, again, organised by degree of difficulty. So there should be ample of each. There should be no one of these degree of difficulty criteria that are lacking in practice examples for your students. Okay, next slide, please. Let me just briefly go on and talk about, now Melanie's going to say heaps more in a moment about the general Maths 1 and 2 resources and how she can use them. So I've just focused here on the text. Let me just go on and talk about Unit 3 and 4 briefly. I'd like to make a couple of comments about it. This slide shows the QCAA syllabus on the left, the chapter structure in the centre, and the old chapter structure on the right, as I did earlier. And once again, we can absolutely endorse that the book will unfold in the same order with the same topic names and the same subtopic structure and the same terminology and the same notation that you have seen in the QCAA guideline documents. The changes to the GM3-4 syllabus are not huge. They're largely clarification and expansion of dot points. There's an equal number of dot points in each unit now, and so that means that the units are the same length, and that's been achieved by splitting some topics from the 2019 syllabus to go to 2025. So, for example, bivariate data analysis is now 2 topics, loans, investments, and annuities is now 2 topics, and network decision mathematics is now 2 topics. Now, in the past, we haven't quite matched the chapter structure to the topic structure, but you can be assured that in the next version of the books, they will be closely mapped as they were in 1-2. All of the same features from the General Maths 1-2 books will be in the General Maths 3-4 books, but we will also include a few additional things. For each section, that's not chapter level, but section level, there will be exam 1 type questions, multiple choice questions. There'll be 2 to 4 of each, which are all simple familiar. So on every single section, your students will have an opportunity to practice multiple choice questions. And we will be adding to the book a final revision chapter, which covers all of the topics in both units 3 and 4 and prepares students for the external assessment. So right at the end of the book, 1 revision chapter, everything that comes in the book before it, structured around the structure of the final exams. Okay, I thank you for listening today, and I'd like to now pass you over to Melanie.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. So I'm going to talk about how I've used the first edition in my classroom and what I know about how we created the second edition and how exciting it will be with what we've got in there. So what I'm finding now is that there are a lot more questions, and the questions are differentiated to meet the needs of the wide range of students that take general maths. So some of them are really comfortable with maths. Some of them, maths isn't their favorite subject. They have to do it to get their ATAR, so they're in general maths. So what's really exciting is that there's a lot more simple familiar, complex familiar questions that they will feel some success when they do that. The textbooks, resources that we have are usable in the classroom, and there's lots of stuff that is going to be online that we can assign them to do outside of class. Next slide. So the new stuff in the chapter are the learning intentions at the very beginning. So what I envision myself doing with that is making sure that the stuff that's in that section is aligned to what's been happening in the syllabus. So I see myself using this in two different ways. One, for reassurance for myself as the teacher that this is going to meet the requirements of the syllabus. Two, so that I can reassure the students that all the effort that they're making to study the stuff in this section is for a purpose. So they're more willing to buy in, they're more willing to engage with what's happening, and then I can get them through that. I am really looking forward to this being helpful to all of the teachers out there that are out of field. So we know that there's maths teachers out there that are teaching maths that have not taught maths in a really long time or have not ever taught maths and they just need them. So if this can help them be confident that they're delivering the syllabus in the way that it should be without their innate expertise in the maths, I'm really excited to give them that little bit of push. The worked examples are really great. Every worked example comes with a video. The way that I've used that is I've done the example in class with the kids. I've watched the video with them, or I flip my classroom and I've asked them to watch that video before they get to class. And then we talk about that question or do a follow-up question with that. So there's lots of different ways and to use the worked examples and the videos that are there. It is also really helpful for kids away. So if they're away for sport or they're away for something else because they're sick, they can catch up kind of on their own and have a little bit of support there. I am really excited that the formulas from the formula sheet will be in the text in the same way, because the questions from the students always ask, if it's written in a different way, is it still the same? Because they're unsure, can I use this and still get full marks? So I want that to be consistent for them. I want that to be consistent for us as we teach. I want that to be really helpful for the out of field teachers to know this is right, this is what we should be doing, this is how it's going to be presented in the external or be used in Unit 3 and Unit 4. So I'm excited that that's going to be exactly the same. So the section summary is there to make sure that everything has happened. And the key ideas is the glossary. Now, I think that's really important because QCAA is not at this stage producing a new glossary with the new syllabus. So if we can give the students that list of all the things that we've done with a little definition, I think that's going to be good for them and it'll be good for the teachers that are there. Next slide, please. So the exercise structure is mostly the same when it's paired with a worked example. So every worked example has a follow-up question in the exercises that a student can do to make sure that they've taken the skills from the worked example and they can do it by themselves without any scaffolding. There is simple familiar, complex familiar, and complex unfamiliar, and we've written them in response to what QCAA has required. So I find now when I look at the number of questions that are in a section and the number of questions that are in a review chapter, there should be a sufficient number of questions for us to do in class to get them started, to give them homework and consolidation questions outside of class. I'm not going to have to look for external sources elsewhere to be able to cover the content that we need. I am excited about the problem solving and modeling section because kids are always asking me for more of those challenging questions. And I sometimes don't have access to a lot of that. So if we can create that section, just have a bunch of CU questions for them to try, for us to model with them, to give them just something to practice doing that. I'm really excited about that. Next slide. So the revision materials, there's so much of it. I'm really excited about that. So the chapter review that we've got, every chapter's got one. The skills checklist has changed. It is written in the student active voice, and I'm really, really excited about that. The student can actually use it to check themselves. They say, I can do this. One of the things that I've done with the checklist before is I've used it as a starter for them. So I have them pick out a skill from that checklist. They have to make sure that they can do it. They have to write their own question that meets that skill. They have to write the solution and the marking scheme that goes with it. And then they have to share it with somebody else and see if they can trade questions and see how they go. I am really glad that every skill that we list in the checklist is also mapped to the section with examples and questions in case they can't do that and they want to go back and find it. They can be more independent about that. They can go have a look without the teacher needing to be there. So that is going to be a great training thing for them in year 11 and to prep them for all of the independent study that they're going to need to be able to do when they get into year 12. So all of that is really exciting. I'm really excited about that. The revision chapters, what I find with the revision chapter is I can pull questions from the revision chapter and use it as my pretest. So I'll pull some questions out of that, do it as a starter at the very beginning, see what they know, have it as my assessment for learning sort of stuff, and then they'll do it again at the end of the chapter when they're revising for themselves. So there's so much stuff in there for them to try, for them to do. And I like that there's multiple choice questions and short response, and there's equal number of multiple choice questions and short response to make up part of that 60%, so that the kids can have practice with the multiple choice to get ready for the mock and the external, but also the short response questions when the year 12 internals may not have any multiple choice. So there's enough simple familiar there that we can pull from that and have a great suite of questions for the kids to practice. Next slide. So the online support materials that are going to be available are the quiz questions. So along with the stuff that's in the text, there's quiz questions that they can do in the Cambridge Go. They're all simple familiar, and they're all auto marked, so you don't have to do any work. You can look at what they've done, you can see what they've gotten right and wrong and go from there, but you don't actually have to mark that. That keeps my workload down. That makes me really happy. The worked example videos are there. The work solutions are there. So the work solutions are really handy for the kids when I'm not there and they need to figure out where they went wrong. And I'm not always going to be there. There isn't enough time for that. So I like having the work solutions for them. I am looking for the work solutions to give to the out of field teachers. If they need help trying to figure out, am I doing this right? I need to deliver this to kids. That can be their confidence builder that, oh, I am right, or this is how it should be set out because I haven't done it in a while. So like the work solutions will be really handy. There's skill sheets, chapter tests, and update assignments. We've got the teaching programs and the curriculum grids like we had before to meet the new syllabus. So if you're looking to write a unit plan, that might be a place to start. The test generator has an updated question bank, and there is an exam generator now to help us write assessment that we need to. So I'm really excited about all the stuff that we have, all the stuff that we can do with our students to make this course accessible to them and they can feel some success.
Thanks a lot, Melanie. Just a couple of things to add to what you described about the online support materials. If we could just go back one slide. Yeah, just on the worked example videos, there will be a demonstration video for every worked example in both the general books as well as methods and specialist and essential. So a video for every worked example across the series. Work solutions can, as with the current edition of the general books, the teacher controls whether you make those available to students or not. As Melanie described, all of those other resources, chapter tests, assignments, sample PSMTs, and so on, all updated for the new edition, just as the light went off in the meeting room that I'm in. Back over to you, Kim. I think we'll be getting to a Q&A session now.
Great, thank you. So just a few slides, just so that we can add in some of the arrival times and price points if you haven't been in the previous webinars. So I'll stay on this slide just for a moment because I want to remind everyone of the landing page, Senior Maths landing page, which is underneath the textbooks here. I know that we've bombarded everyone with our marketing material on these landing pages, but it's really important that you know that everything that comes out related to these books will land on the landing page, so you can keep your eyes on there, and we will let you know as things arrive there too. So keep an eye out in your emails. Thanks, Nick. Next slide, please. So publication dates, the general maths is mid-September and methods August, of course. So they're the first cabs off the ranks. Specialist and essential maths October. Next slide, please. Price points, print and digital, $79.95, and of course, digital only, $63.95. The online teaching suite actually price point is going up from the 1st of August. So I forgot to update this slide. It will be $299.95 from August 1. So if you wanted to buy a teaching suite, they won't be ready anyway. I was going to say get in now and purchase it at $150, but they actually won't be ready anyway. So you'll be paying $300 if you choose to buy one. Next slide, please. So as always, intro of the Queensland crew. Myself, I look after all of the Gold Coast. So hello to everyone looking in from the Gold Coast. And I also look after Brisbane Metro and all the way up in the Cairns and Townsville region. So welcome to all of you guys too. Annie does all of Brisbane, Sunshine Coast as well. So she has a huge area. And Deborah, who I've introduced before, she's new for us. We're so lucky to have her on the team. She's looking after Toowoomba, but also Bundaberg through to Home Hill. Know that you can reach out to any of us though. So we're not just restricted to those areas. We all look after everything. You know, we're all happy to hear from you, and we'll all give you a helping hand should you need it, and any info if you need to have it. So now we're going to add back in Scott Halligan, who we all know so very well. He's looks after the publishing crew, and Ben Staker, who I'm not sure if I've had you in the webinars before, Ben, but welcome to you. He's looking after the general maths books. So these are our two publishing crew, and back to Kay and Melanie. Thank you. Q&A time.
Before we get to the questions of our authors, and just a reminder to teachers out there, you can write your questions into the chat, and we'll see them and put them to Kay and Melanie. But this is one for you, Kim. It's a question that has come through, but it will also be something that a lot of people might be wondering. When will the sample chapters be available? So there's a lot we're very close to completing a lot of the putting the final touches on a lot of our resources. I have sample chapters available that I can look at any time, but when will we be making those available to teachers out there?
So on the landing page, you'll be able to see we've got specialist up there now and methods as well. So general maths is about a week and a half away. I think we've got everything that we need. It's just getting it prepped to put them up. The final course, of course, is essential maths, which is a little further away, possibly 5 weeks or so, 4 to 5 weeks. So general very soon, very soon.
Excellent. Well, there have been a couple of questions in already, but I'll handball over to my colleague Ben Staker, who is the publisher of the General Mathematics books, and he can go through some initial questions for Kay and Melanie.
Yeah, thank you, Scott, and thank you everyone for coming this afternoon. I know, you don't always want to be sitting in a webinar at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but thank you for your time. Okay, so just starting off before we jump in questions, looking at some of the questions you've already asked. I think so. Oh gosh, sorry. So a question for Kay. Are there 60, 20, 20 of simple familiar, complex familiar, complex unfamiliar questions in each exercise?
I would say roughly. I would hate somebody to get out their calculator and start holding me to that. I can say to you that we had every intention, where possible, of doing this. Now, in some of the very early introductory sections of a chapter, it is just really hard to try and put in complex familiar and complex unfamiliar if you're introducing a new topic area. And so some of them just don't lead to that sort of question. So, particularly in chapter 1, and you've got no cross-curriculum area that you can go to because you're in chapter 1. I would certainly say that has been the intention as the chapters unfold. As you get further into the chapter and you get further into the book, I would say that we are doing that pretty consistently. I would say in some of the perhaps earlier chapters, in some of the earlier sections within the chapter, it's been a little bit difficult to go to complex unfamiliar quite so quickly. But we've given it, and certainly when we get to review and revision, I'm pretty confident that we have done that, and we've done it pretty religiously.
Yeah. This is one probably for Ben and UK in particular. This is a question from Rita. At some stage, will you be adding complex familiar, complex unfamiliar questions to Cambridge Go tasks? So I guess in terms of answering that, what kind of resources will we be providing in addition to the textbook that will contain more CF and CU? So, for example, chapter tests. So perhaps we can talk a little bit about what our intentions are for the structure of the chapter tests.
That's certainly a conversation that I've been actively involved with at the moment in terms of around the math methods chapter tests. This is something that we will definitely be doing. We'll be moving the chapter tests to more clearly reflect the 60-20-20, the format of what assessment is in that particular unit, whichever of the subjects we're talking about. At the moment, the quiz questions are simple familiar, and they're clearly so because they're multiple choice, and there's no question around that they will be simple familiar. The skills, we've moved to an interesting place with the skill sheets. In the past, we've had a view, I think, that the skill sheets were very basic skills, and sometimes we've even just used them to cover preliminary knowledge that was required to even get into the set of exercises. Our view of those has changed now over the last edition, and in this edition, the skill sheets can be seen as additional exercises which will cover the range of simple familiar, complex unfamiliar, and they will be labelled as such. The assignment, I don't think we'll go there with the assignment. I think we'll try and leave the assignment much more open-ended and maybe able to be extended in some way, maybe even into a PSMT if the teacher has got some thoughts about how they might want to practice those skills. But yes, it's front of mind. But look, as I said early on in this conversation, this is a dialogue. And these conversations, textbooks don't happen in a vacuum. And if you have strong feelings about something, you want something, then I'm all for you to just go and harass these lovely people that work for Cambridge, and say, this is what you've done, but this would be more useful to us. And then we know, and then we can, if we don't get it right in the very first iteration, then these textbooks and their online materials are also dynamic beings. You know, a textbook just doesn't sit on a shelf. Well, a textbook does actually just sit on a shelf, but the online teaching suite and the ancillary materials are dynamic, and they can be updated and reviewed over time. So, you know, I would say to you, not only now as we get the textbook ready, but any time over the next 5 years as the textbook is in use, to be in a conversation with your sales team, with your rep, with the publishers, and say, this is what we as teachers really need. And they will come back to us, and we will really work very hard to make sure you get what you need. Thanks.
Yeah, well said, Kay. And it is that kind of feedback that has informed a lot of the changes and improvements and so on that you and Melanie have talked about today. Why we've done certain things, that the way that chapters are structured, whether there was not enough or too much of certain kinds of material, the review of how the degree of difficulty questions, that those kinds of categorizations were made. A lot of that has been improved this time, and it is because of the feedback that has come through, the kind of feedback that Kay has been talking about today. So that is how we improve. Kay, a question for you, just because it pertains to other titles that you're an author on. This is a question from Mark. I am unable to make your other webinars and methods and specialists, and wondering if those textbooks are also set out in a similar order, i.e. in the order of the syllabus and dot points.
That's a very good question. I believe so. I'm going to say with hand on my heart, or Kim's nodding. The only thing I'm aware of in at least in methods, I think that there is some preliminary material in there.
Yeah, that's right.
And so, but I think when you get to the curriculum, it is in the right order, but I think there's also some additional material in the book which prepares students to be ready for what comes after. Have you got a comment on that, Scott?
Yeah, that's spot on. And for you, Mark, or anyone else who wasn't able to make the methods and specialist webinar when it happened about a month ago now, I think you can go onto Cambridge's website and find the recording of that webinar and watch it. And the first part of that webinar actually, as I try and get this light to come back on, there we go. The first part of that webinar does feature Joel Speranza, who was going to be part of this webinar to talk about the PSMT guide that he has written for the new edition. So he will, as Kim said at the start, he'll be recording one specifically for general, and we will be adding it to the what ends up being published, the recording of this webinar that we're in right now. But you can also go back and watch the methods and specialist recording. It's on the Cambridge's YouTube channel. It's on the website, and have a look at that specifically for methods and specialist. Ben, I'll handball over to you to take on some other questions for Kay and Melanie.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. So maybe a question for you, Melanie, from Sarah M. Are there more simple, familiar questions for the students that have to work really, really hard to achieve a C standard?
My view of that is yes. There's more multiple choice questions than there were before, and there's more of the short response sort of questions that there were before. So I think the answer to that is yes, and I felt that when I wrote them. So so I'm hopeful that the kids will have enough to build their confidence and help them feel success in what they're learning.
And if I may just add to that, and I think a point Melanie made with me when we were beginning to talk about these books, and she was bringing her expertise into the team, is that a question can't be simple, familiar, unless it's both simple and familiar. And to be familiar means that they have seen it before and that they've had plenty of practice at doing the same sort of question. So I think that's pervaded the way we've written right across this book to understand the need to be able to do something and to do it again and to do it again. But once again, I'd suggest to you that if you find there are areas in the book, if you start using it where you feel there's not enough simple familiar questions, then this feedback come back into Scott, and we'll create a skill sheet to go alongside that set of exercises to make sure that you've got what you need.
Yep. Here is a question from a good friend of Cambridge, Ray Minns, out at North Pine Christian College. In the first, I think I'll take this one. I think I can answer it. In the first edition, there were some online assessment items for teacher use that did not have work solutions. Will there be work solutions for all skill sheets, tests, and assignments? That I'm gauging the answer to that question by looking at Kay's face and Melanie's face. It is an enormous amount of work to provide work solutions to all of the content in the textbook. If you printed out all of that material, it would just amount to thousands of pages. It is a huge undertaking to provide solutions to the skill sheets, tests, and assignments, and so on. My priority for Kay in particular and the authors is to get on with the work that is required for the 3 and 4 book, rather than doing certain kinds of additional work for the skill sheets, tests, and so on. But that doesn't mean we won't be doing it in the future. So we can, as Kay described before, we will certainly take that feedback on, Ray. It's not, you're not the only one who has asked for that. It is just hard to find the time amongst all of the other priorities that we have to put towards that. But as I said, it doesn't mean that we won't be doing it in the future. All right, over to you, Ben.
Thank you, Scott. There's a question here from Louise. I think I'll answer. So she's asked, what does the online teaching suite provide? So as Melanie alluded to in her final slide, the teacher suite so it has the whole base book, it has quiz questions, has access to the test generator, which allows you to set questions for your class. And then you also get access to a whole wide range of more additional teacher resources that students won't have access to, that you can then use for homework, assignments, as a basis for creating new assessments. So one of the things with the Unit 1 and 2 assessment now, the scope and sequence of that's completely up to teachers. So perhaps you might want to use some of these resources as a base to help create assessment. So that's going to include things like skill sheets, chapter tests, multiple chapter tests for every single chapter, which are topic specific. We'll have a mix of simple, familiar, multiple choice questions, complex, unfamiliar, complex, familiar questions. There'll also be, 2 skill sheets per chapter, at least, which again, additional questions that you can use that students wouldn't otherwise be able to see. Assignments for every single chapter, which are just additional questions on top of the review questions, which act in a similar way. They'll also get access to curriculum grids, teaching programs, as well as updated PSMT material to help you in preparing for that when they move into Unit 3 and 4. I think that about sums up. Scott, do you have anything else to add to that?
No, I think you've covered it all pretty well, Ben. Go
Just one point, which I don't know if you made, Ben, but I might make again, is that a lot of the online teaching suite materials are in Word documents, and therefore teachers can modify them or cut and paste them or just slightly change them in a way that would make it simple for them to prepare their own additional exercises or their own tests. So I encourage you to do that if you can save some of your own time.
Yep, that's exactly right. Another question from Louise. This is probably best suited to you, Kim. Is the price that was mentioned on the slide that you showed earlier, is that price per teacher or per school? I think this relates to the the price of the online teaching suite. Could you just talk a little bit about pricing and how that works for schools who adopt the Cambridge resources?
Okay, so pricing wise, that's a difficult one because we've got a few people from other states here as well. So I know that they work a little bit differently. So I won't talk to the textbook. When it comes to the online teaching suite, though, if the school adopts the textbook with their students, then you do get complimentary online teaching suites. So I think that's really what you're trying to ask about there. Even having a price point can often be quite confusing because most of you know, particularly if you've been using Cambridge for a while, we don't charge you for those teacher resource accounts if you've adopted the series. That's only if we have a school that has chosen not to go with Cambridge and they might choose to purchase a teaching suite so that they've got additional materials. It doesn't happen very often, but they're the schools that we put a price point on it for. I hope that I've answered your question.
Yep, very good. So I might ask this question of Kay and Melanie. This is probably best suited to you, Melanie, and you've already touched on this already in an earlier part of the webinar. So a question is, with the learning intentions and skills checklist that's new for this edition, can you tell us a bit more about how you see this feature enabling students to achieve a better understanding in the classroom?
So with the learning intentions, I think it's really important that they know what they're doing and all the effort that they're putting forward to learn all of this stuff is for a reason. And if I can get that across to them, I have more buy-in. And if I have more buy-in, I have more effort. And so they're more willing to do the work, and they're from that, they're going to feel more success. So I am really excited about having those learning intentions there so that they are aware that what they're doing maps to the syllabus that they need to meet in order to earn their QCE point, and then move on to Unit 3 and 4 and do their external exam to get their ATAR. General students aren't necessarily the best math students, and so you often have to be creative in the way that you motivate them and make things very, very tangible for them. So I think that's going to help with that. I am really also cognizant of all of the schools out there that have felt the teacher shortage, especially in math, and they're just getting whoever they can to help them deliver what they need to their students. And the learning intentions can help this teacher make sure that what they're delivering is the right thing. They're not having to go to the QCAA syllabus and make sure, am I doing it right? It's right there for them in the text. And they just have to pick it up and go. And they know that the kids are going to meet the criteria that they need to. So I'm really excited about that. The skills checklist used to be just a list of stuff with bullet points. And I'm really excited that it maps to the exercise and some questions in the exercises that and the worked examples that meet that skill, so that a kid can go back and look if they are really uncertain about that skill, and they can go and do that on their own,
Yeah,
because
well, like
I'm not
what?
there all the time.
Yeah,
So
so they to remind them, what does it actually look like in the
yes.
maths that they have seen in the book or on the board or whatever it is in the worked example? What does the criterion that is spelled out in a sentence, what does that mean in the form of a question? And then if they go back and they can do that question pretty comfortably, then they know that they'll be able to tick off that criterion. If they need assistance, every criteria is mapped according to which section in the chapter it is linked, it has been covered in. So if they look at that and they are unsure, or it's been a little while since they did that, might have been several weeks ago or a month ago or something like that, they can use that link to find where it was that they covered that, and just do a little bit of a refresher before they tick off that criterion.
And I'm hoping that will be motivating for them, because when they used to read that dot point before and they're like, I don't know what that is, but I don't know what to do. They just stop. And now they've got a place to go and they can kind of keep going. So I'm excited about that.
And for anyone who uses the Cambridge Year 7 to 10 resources, that they'll be familiar with this structure. That's something we've been doing since the third edition, I think. So we're 2 editions into using it for the 7 to 10 resources. Ben, any other questions?
Yep. So there's another question here from Marge. I think this is probably best directed at UK. They've asked, are you aware that QCAA have taken out compound interest from Unit 1 in the latest amended version?
Yes, we're looking at that now, and we'll have to make adjustments. But thank you for reminding us. But it wasn't shown in the proof that I had up there. But believe me, that's just a proof. That's not the printed textbook that I had showing for you.
Ben, do we have any other questions?
Just a couple. Sorry. Maybe again for Kay. So given that the scope and sequence of assessment is up to teachers for Unit 1 and 2, can you talk a bit about how the resources will aid teachers and prepare students for the assessments that they might see in 3 and 4?
Well, I think that's been a primary focus of how we've structured the assessments in 1-2. So by the inclusion of multiple choice questions in the revision chapters, which they will then see in the 3-4 as part of their external assessment, and by the short response questions that are really modelled. I mean, you know, in the previous version, we had some short and we had extended response. Well, that's no longer the structure. The structure is that there are short response, and they are modelled on the sort of length, the type, length, focus of the questions that are seen in the 3-4 assessment, and they are, as I said, degree of difficulty graded and that is made clear. So I think we've made a very, very, very explicit attempt to make sure that we're leading students into the 3-4 assessments, and that they will have been given opportunity to practice, and that nothing will look unfamiliar when they get there. Mel, do you want to answer anything about that? Any more comments?
I guess I'm the most excited about having more multiple choice and short response simple familiar questions. So that's probably the part that reassures me that, like, they're going to know the stuff that they need to be able to progress to Unit 3 and Unit 4. So, you know, I think that's really powerful in the text that we've got now.
Excellent. One final question that we have here. This one's from Ray. I found that the current general syllabus could be adequately covered in the time frame available for most Queensland schools. Do you feel that the new 2025 syllabus will take the same amount of time to teach as the old syllabus? This is probably more for you, Mel.
I don't know yet, because I haven't done it. But you know, the numbers say that, but what happens in the classroom when we actually have to do it is going to be a whole different game. And now all the stakes have changed because of the assessment structure, with, you know, only having to examine 3 topics. So I think, you know, I really need to think about that a bit more, and plan that, and that'll be different for different schools with their structure of how they run their timetable. So yeah, I'm not sure yet.
Yeah, I guess it remains to be seen, but anyone who has spoken to QCAA or been part of their own presentations about the syllabuses that they've given over the past 12 months or so, that is certainly something that they had in mind about the revised structure, unit to unit, and trying to get a sense of the amount of hours assigned to each topic. It's obviously, as with methods in particular and specialist, something that they were pretty cognizant of when they were arranging the syllabus, bringing in a few new things and taking some old things out. But it isn't overly different overall, Melanie, the new syllabus compared to the current one. It hasn't been a major overhaul, so we wouldn't be expecting it to be too different in the amount of class time to cover all of the dot points. All right, well, I think that gets us to the end of the questions. So thank you very much, Kay, Melanie, and Ben for being part of that. And we can handball back over to you, Kim, to wrap things up.
Wonderful. Well, I'm really, on behalf of Cambridge, I just wanted to say a big thank you to everybody as well. Kay and Melanie, thank you for your time. And of course, to Scott and Ben, thank you so much for everyone's expertise. I also want to thank Joel Speranza, who, although wasn't here this evening, has already created his recording and sent it in. So we'll be adding that to the link to the webinar that you'll be able to receive after the event. It'll take a couple of days for it to come up, and you'll get an email when that happens. There's also a feedback form, so please if you have a chance, please fill out the feedback form. It's really important information for us. We will put together as much as we can and make sure that we're responding to anything that comes through from there. So make sure that you send something back if you have any feedback you'd like to share. Thank you all for your time too. Thank you for taking off your afternoon and spending an hour with us. We love having you as always. Please reach out to any of us here in Queensland. We're always here to help you. Enjoy your evening. Please travel home safely if you're still at work, and take care. Thank you.